How do you fit 100 years of the history of the Royal Canadian Navy into 4 stained glass memorial windows? In May of 2007, Rear Admiral Bill Hughes attended the dedication ceremony in Kingston, Ontario, of a memorial window to the Princess of Wales' own regiment. The significance of the memorial window and the dedication ceremony struck a chord with him, and he noted that the window resembled the configuration and size of those in his own St. Paul's Church in Esquimalt. The idea of a memorial for the then upcoming Centennial was conceived. Consecrated on December 12, 1866, St. Paul's Church has a long association with the Canadian Navy. In 1911, the name of the church was changed to St. Paul's Naval and Garrison Church. Admiral Hughes proposed the project to the rector of the church, and a committee was formed with representatives from the church and the naval side. Rear Admiral Hughes was appointed as the committee chair. Approval was granted by National Defence Headquarters to include the project as an official Naval Centennial project. Mercer and Schaefer Glass Studios was selected to undertake the work. A fundraising program produced more than 400 donations from the United Kingdom, all of the Canadian provinces and territories, 5 U.S. states, and many towns and cities with ships named after them. The committee further included a book of remembrance into which donors could submit names to be remembered, and also a book detailing the significance of the symbolism of the window. Darwin Robinson, an ex-naval officer and an expert craftsman in wood, created the container for the 2 books. Designed and constructed by the glassworks firm of Mercer and Schaefer Glass Studios in Victoria, the 4-panel window depicts the history of the Royal Canadian Navy over 100 years. The glass was imported from Germany, with the craftsmanship of the window carried out in Victoria. The window is protected by a transparent Lexan screen on the outside, and the window was dedicated in May 2010 by Bishop James Cowan in a ceremony in the church. When we have finished the fleet reviews, band performances, and many other special events to mark the 100th anniversary of Canada's naval service, this window will be a lasting tribute to the Navy and our sailors for generations to come, said retired Rear Admiral Bill Hughes, the head of the committee which made this official Centennial project a reality. He further went on, this window and the Naval Homecoming statue in the Inner Harbour will be the 2 lasting monuments that will mark the Naval Centennial in Victoria. The anchor at the top of the window is thought to have originated with the construction of the church in 1866. The small glass chips around the anchor were changed to blue to match the rest of the window. The blue reminds us of the sea in all 4 panels. Shown vertically in ghostly white are the names of the Canadian Navy ships sunk in World War I HMCS Galliano and the 24 sunk in World War II in the Battle of the Atlantic. The red jewels scattered about the 4 panels remember the lives lost when the ships were sunk. Shown in the gold rope around the 4 panels are the names of the 24 Naval Reserve Divisions going from west to east across Canada. A stained glass window must be colorful to be effective, so grey-hulled ships and submarines were ruled out. But the colorful symbols of the units were used instead. The badges chosen were those of ships and units with strong historical significance, those representing a class of ships or a type of ship. Upon entering the church, one becomes aware of the many flags that have been laid up here for safekeeping. At the chancel step hangs the naval colour presented by King George VI to the Royal Canadian Navy at Beacon Hill Park when he and Queen Elizabeth visited Victoria in 1939. Across from it, hanging above the memorial to Admiral Hughes, the founder of the Canadian Navy, is the white ensign which flew on the first HMCS Vancouver before she was paid off. And beside it hang the last red ensign to fly at Workpoint Barracks and the blue ensign. These were laid up here in the late 1960s when the new Canadian flag was introduced. The blue ensign was the naval jack, and the red ensign was the flag of Canada, the Canadian Army, and the merchant service. The windows comprise a carefully crafted mosaic of symbols that together tell a complex story. The symbols not only remember the ships and other equipment, but also the people that gave a soul to our Navy. In the left-hand window, starting at the top, there's the badge of the Maritime Command Pacific. This is followed by the white ensign flown by ships of the Royal Canadian Navy until 1965, when it was replaced by the Canadian flag. Then the badge of HMCS Naden, the maiden shore base of the Pacific coast from 1922 to 1968, which is now known as CFB Esquimalt. Then the badge of HMCS Patriot, the badge of the Commanding Officer Naval Divisions in Hamilton, Ontario. It also represents the destroyer HMCS Patriot, which was in commission 1920 to 1928, which, with HMCS Patrician, were the first two destroyers in the Royal Canadian Navy. Then the badge of HMCS Saguenay, which represents the two destroyers D-70 and DDH-206. Then Fiskard Light at the entrance to Esquimalt Harbour, which was built in 1860, the first on Canada's west coast, guiding naval ships into Esquimalt Harbour since that time. The gold stripes represent the three branches of the Navy in the Second World War: the Royal Canadian Navy, the Royal Canadian Naval Reserve, and the Royal Canadian Volunteer Reserve. Then the badge of HMCS Rainbow represents HMCS Rainbow, an ex-Royal Navy cruiser which was the Royal Canadian Navy's first ship on the Pacific coast. It also represents the Submarine, an ex-United States Navy ship, which was in commission 1968 to 1974. At the bottom, the gold spheres represent St. Nicholas, the patron saint of sailors, and also of pawnbrokers. The quote is, "A harvest of righteousness is sown for those who make peace." James 3:18. In the left-hand center window, starting at the top, is the original badge of the Royal Canadian Navy. Then the cap badge of a Master Seaman, and the name of Master Seaman Hugh Price. The badge of HMCS Beacon Hill, a World War II frigate, was named for the city of Victoria and was paid off in 1967. Then the badge of the Canadian Merchant Navy, which was so vital to the war effort in the Second World War. Then the badge of HMCS Haida, the Second World War Tribal-class destroyer, one of 8 in the Royal Canadian Navy, which was paid off in 1963, and she is now berthed in Hamilton, Ontario as a museum ship. The badge of HMCS Ontario, a Second World War light cruiser, the ex-HMS Minotaur, was paid off in 1958. Then there's the shoulder pip of a Royal Canadian Navy nursing sister from the Second World War. The badge of HMCS Sackville, a Second World War corvette, is now berthed in Halifax and operated by the Canadian Navy Memorial Trust. The oak leaves represent Londonderry, Northern Ireland, and the pitcher plant represents Newfoundland to commemorate the convoys that ran between Newfoundland and Londonderry during the Second World War. In the right-hand center window, starting at the top, is the badge of Maritime Command, which is a naval anchor and a maritime air eagle. The cap badge of a naval officer follows, and then the badge of HMCS Annapolis, DDH-265, which was in commission 1964 to 1996. This represents a helicopter-carrying ship, the Maritime Air, and there were 2 in the class. HMCS Annapolis was sunk as a diving reef in 2010. Then the cap badge of a petty officer. This follows the badge of HMCS Saint Laurent, DDE-205 and DDH-205, which was in commission 1955 to 1974, and there were 7 of these ships in the class. The badge of HMCS Okanagan, S-74, represents an O-class submarine an ex-Royal Navy diesel-electric submarine in commission 1968 to 1998, and there were 3 of those in class in the Canadian Navy. Then a Sea King helicopter, which was born in aircraft carriers, auxiliary oilers, and destroyer helicopter ships. This was still serving in 2010. The badge of HMCS Bonaventure, the last Canadian aircraft carrier, was in commission 1957 to 1970. Then the Dolphin, which is the insignia of a submariner from 1961 to 1972. And it has been replaced now by 2 dolphins facing each other with a maple leaf and crown. At the bottom of the window are cap tallies with the names of ships which were worn by sailors on their caps to indicate to which ship they belonged. And these tallies represent HMC ships Nootka, Crusader, Chaudière, and Mackenzie. In the right-hand window, starting at the top, is the badge of Maritime Command Atlantic. Then the Canadian Naval Jack, which is flown at the bow of ships in harbour or at anchor, from colours to sunset. Then the badge of HMCS Halifax, FFH 330, a Canadian patrol frigate, and there are 12 of those in class. Then the Sambro Lighthouse, which has been guiding ships into Halifax Harbour since 1758. The badge of HMCS Athabascan, DDG 282, a new Tribald-class destroyer in 1972, and there were 4 of those in class. Then a Navy diver's helmet, representing the deep diving and explosive ordnance disposal activities, which have also taken naval personnel to Afghanistan. Then the badge of HMCS Kingston, MM700, a coastal defense vessel, and there are 12 of these vessels in class. Then the badge of the Women's Royal Canadian Naval Service, also known as the Wrens, and the Navy's Centennial Rose, developed by the WRCNS Association for the 2010 Centennial. The badge of HMCS Protecteur, replenishment ship, and there are 2 of those in class. Then the signal flags B, Bravo, and Z, Zulu, which is naval code for well done. An admiral saluting all of the men and the women in the Canadian Navy is near the bottom, and then dedicated to the men and women of the Canadian Navy 1910 to 2010. After the Naval Memorial Window was dedicated, the donations left over were sufficient to create a second set of 3 smaller windows. The windows are dedicated as the Sailor's Window of Remembrance. It is dedicated to the sailors of the Royal Navy, the Royal Fleet Auxiliary, and the Royal Canadian Navy who have given their lives in the service of their countries. The window consists of 3 panels. The left-hand one is for the Royal Navy with a naval crown, the white ensign, the blue ensign, and a naval fouled anchor. The blue ensign is flown by the Royal Fleet Auxiliary. The right-hand one is for the Royal Canadian Navy and has a naval crown, the white ensign, and the Canadian flag, and the naval fouled anchor. The center panel displays the same monument that appears in all the Commonwealth war cemeteries around the world. Beneath it is a rectangular stone on which is the inscription, "Their name liveth forevermore." Because the window is so low, and because the new window glass is less opaque than the old glass, objects outside the window, such as cars in the parking lot, would show up in the background. That was really not a good thing. So each of the small colored diamonds in the window could not be left plain. Each now contains either a version of the Christian cross or a naval anchor. When the sun shines through the window in the afternoon, the entrance is ablaze in color. Rear Admiral William Andrew Hughes was a former naval flag officer and a community leader in Victoria, British Columbia. He was a driving force in the creation of this project and one of its major funders.